Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, it's Van Diesel back at again with a Carpet Vanguard deck profile. So if you guys enjoyed them, like, subscribe, and let's one start, shall we? This time we're covering the final set 9 deck for me to record, but the second to last set 9 deck for you guys to see, and that is Keter Sentry. Amaretti. Give me a second, because I'm like I just got throat chopped by my dog, and it's like starting to really hurt to talk. So, anyways. Amaretti, for those of you that don't remember, is that one Divine Sister grade 3 that had a skill to support a specific Divine Sister grade 1 and 2, and I jokingly said this is the best main grade 3 of set 9, and I know I didn't have to because no one said I should. I didn't even hold myself to this, so I never even said it, but I was like, you know what, I'm going to build a deck around this thing, and I did. Probably not the way you guys intended, or probably not the way Bushy intended, but I'm going to build it this way, and I'm going to keep it this way until Bushy gives us a main grade 3 for Divine Sisters that has a Vanguard skill. Let's go and get the start, shall we? And you can see what I mean by this deck. First up today, we have our starter in Wingal Brave, grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 6k base. Auto roll upon if you win second, draw cards, standard starter. Nothing special about it, it's just a free draw if you win second. You can technically run any starter you want, but this deck, because it has no real ride line, I took the Blast or MLB ride line I used, so you know Blaster Dark, Marron, and then by default I had to use Wingal so I can get a guaranteed kill with Blaster Dark and get the drive check. So technically this can be any starter you want, but I do want to go with like the consistency because I think most of the deck is supposed to be inconsistent as a joke. So Wingal Brave is our starter today. Then we have our Overtrigger and True Arbiter Dragon of 100 Swords Duralvalse. Grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power. Overtrigger, you may only have one Overtrigger in your deck, or does trigger, move the card, draw a card, choose one use, explicit move for the turn. And if you during drive check, activate it's just what you get until end of turn. You can perform drive checks for the battle as your rear guards attack, which all is a very helpful skill. If for some reason you have a full board or like a full farmer of grade 3s, which is actually a bad thing, you can essentially get 6 drives, which is great. Helps increase your hand. Make sure you're not dead for the next turn unless your opponent sacks their own over, unless they have a big move coming like Greedon. But Aron, it's a good over to see. It works best in Bastion when you get the most aggressive, and yet for some reason I rarely see this over get pulled in Bastion. I see it get pulled in every other Keter deck that isn't Bastion. Well, it's just me playing it or anyone else playing it. But yeah, Duralvalse, it's the solid over. You can run Armortino. If you want to run a bar for the extra 1 million, you can, but in the situation where the deck does what it's supposed to, you get power very easily, so one of Duralvalse. Then we have 3 copies of Protection Magic Proby, grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 4k base. Draw turns, guard circle, opponent's vanguards are grade 3 or greatest with 5k shield. All around pretty solid, helps increase guard power, helps increase hand cards, and considering this deck digs for 3 very specific units, it's very good to have. So I like having the draw trigger, I think it's decent. 3 of, just cause. Then we have 4 copies of Bard of Heavenly Song Alpeg. This is actually helpful for the deck in the case where you can't get out your rear guards, they gain a bunch of numbers, so the front trigger then proceeds to give a bunch of numbers to front row. Grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 4k power. Front tree's guard circle if your opponent's vanguards are greater, 5k shield. So again, helpful because there are times, or to be more exact with the deck, there are 2 units you never want to call to board. There's a unit you always want to keep in hand, more or less, so you can call it to board when the other 2 units get onto board. So having the front trigger there to have as extra guard power is really helpful, especially in the sense that when you actually do drive check the front trigger, it'll give numbers to your front row, and in the case where you don't have your main power gainer, like I said earlier, it'll at least make your power more even, and if you do have your main power gainers out, it'll make them better. So 4 fronts, 3 of draws, we run 4 crits and Blade Feather Dragon, grid 0 boost, 15k shield, 4k power, critical trigger all the way at the end, about to boost it, put it to soul, choose one weakness, 2k for the turn. Okay, listen, the 2k, I always say, does nothing. Even in this deck it does nothing, but if your opponent's Vanguard is at a grade 1, or not grade 1, is there a grade 2 and you manage to get off the full rush combo, then Blade Feather does help in that regard to get 2k, so take that as you will for the crits. We have 4 heals and Circling Sorcerers, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 5k power. You know, standard heal, not so much about it. I don't really like those counter heals. If you want to run the counter heals, go ahead. But considering their shield values are always fluctuating between 10 and 25 depending on the situation, I'd rather have the consistent 15 over the counter heals. But if you want to run them, you can. But like I said, I just prefer these ones, so that's my 4 of. Then move on to the, I guess, non-trigger units. First, we're going to run 3 copies of Departure Towards the Dawn. Okay. This deck, I'm not going to say I went 100% try hard with because I definitely didn't, but I did go a little bit further to try hard. I think the areas I went to is if I could use the abilities, then I ran them. But if I, and by use the abilities, I mean use all of their abilities, doesn't specifically have to be to the full effect. It just has to be I can use the full ability mostly. Like this one, for example. But like if it was something else like Maple, for example, I don't run because I can't use her full ability. But that's what I can mostly use to its full effect, which is by playing it by counterblasting 1, normal order, Look at the top 5 cards of your deck. Choose up to one card with Revolve Form this card name from among them. Reveal it, put it to hand, and if you're or choose up to one great tier list card from among them, call to rear guard and shuffle your deck. Okay, for those of you wondering, no, there's no Revolve Forms in this deck. There's no secret way to superior ride into Revolve Form, get a fuck ton of numbers because you're on Zest, or get extra drives with Gust. No, there's no Revolve Forms. You don't get them. You just call a great tier list from among them to rear guard, and that's important because the grade 1 can possibly add numbers to the grade 2. That's important, or you can call it the grade 2 to get benefits from the grade 1. All around, this order is pretty much just bent to search one of those 2 cards, and it barely does that job well. Either way, it is a solid order though, because at least gets something to board, and it deck thins a little bit, so 3 of. Also, you don't have to call something, it just says choose up to, so technically speaking, you can just counter boss 1 to counter boss 1. I wouldn't suggest it, but it's fair. 3 of. Then we have 4 copies of Diffuser Angel. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. Auto when is placed on rear guard. You put a card from your hand into your soul, choose one of your vanguards, and that and this you can both get +5 for the turn, which is not that bad considering what the main vanguard actually is. It doesn't have any ways to give itself pluses that outright tells you what it is if you're paying attention to anything I've said so far, which means the vanguard will get an extra +5, and that is helpful. And this being a 13k is also helpful because typically you will call this behind vanguard, or if you don't, you're probably calling it to a lone rear guard circle that won't get boosted for a while. So all around, Diffuser Angel is pretty solid. It does give numbers, it does it for free, it gets you soul cards. I like it. 4 of. And then we have 4 copies of Divine Sister Spumone, our most important grade 1 in this deck by a long shot, and one of the 3 cards I was talking about for this deck's importance. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 7k base. Auto rear guard when she boosts a Divine Sister Cassatella, the important grade 2. Draw a card, choose a card from your hand, put it at the bottom of the deck, and then she gets +2k for the turn. Okay, so it's a 9k booster, not the worst thing in the world, and it allows you to swap out a hand card with something else from top of deck and send it to bottom. All around, not a bad grade 1. It does its job well. I wish it had the ability to search the grade 2, but we can't all get what we want, and it does have a decently solid ability, especially if Bushy chooses to actually make a Divine Sister ride line. Literally, if they just gave us 3 cards that all had a Vanguard skill, we'd probably be fine. Either way, Spumone is not a horrible grade 1. It works fine with the deck, and she does her skill for free, so might as well run her as a 4 of. And we have 4 copies of Palladium Zeal Dragon, grade 1 boost, 0 shield, 6k base. Continue Sentinel, and you have up to 4 cells in deck, and on its guard circle, choose your units, it cannot be hit on the battle, and if your hand is 2 or more cards, card and discard it. So in the PG, not spots about it, basically it means that this is one of the cards in your hand, plays it on guard circle, you don't have to discard one, and that's great, because that means you can get as aggressive as you want in the early game, and in this deck, you will always be as aggressive as you want in the early game, because either you pull the combo that you need, and you rush the fuck out of your opponent, or you don't pull the combo that you need, and you rush the fuck out of the opponent, so you can make sure that you live long enough to pull off that combo. So when your opponent inevitably counterattacks you with, let's just say, because I recently did a game with Greedon, 88 double critical, or, you know, just to prove an argument to point, triple critical on the Vanguard swinging right at your face, you can just be like, PG, drop nothing if you have only one other hand card. All around, Zeal is not a bad PG, help save your ass, you can run Aegis Mire for it, but I chose to keep Zeal because Zeal works better for newer cards in my opinion, and also because I just consistently draw Zeal whenever I run him in newer decks, so 4 of Zeal. He's just a solid grade 1, you can run Aegis Mire if you want because they both have the same skill, but yeah. And then we have our last grade 1 in the deck. It's the grade 1 of the right deck, one of them in the right deck, none in the main deck. Of Little Sage Marron, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. All of them is brought upon by a grade 2 card with Blaster in its card name. Look at the top 7. Choose up to 1 grade 2 unit with Blaster from Unload, reveal it, put it to hand and shuffle your deck. If you not reveal a card, choose a Wingal Brave from your soul, you may call it to rear guard. Okay, I still have that argument of like, why the fuck did people run full bow and Blaster Javelin with Graham Grace? I will never understand, but whatever. But point is, it's not a mandatory call, Wingal, you don't have to call it, but the fact that you can call for free if you want to is great. I'm gonna tell you this right now, there are no blasters outside of the 1 grade 2 in the ride deck that have none in the main deck in the deck, so frankly that ability will only ever be used to superior call Wingal, though you do have to mandatorily shuffle your deck because you're forced to search anyways. And then continuous rear guard, the ability that will never go off because there's no way to get this from soul onto board. Like even if you soul boss it out, there's no way to call it from drop. But continuous rear guard during turn, if you have 3 or more units, it gets +2k. All around, not a bad grade 1. It's a 10k booster if you manage to get it on rear guard by some divine intervention, which you never will. But it does end up helping out the ride deck a lot because it gets you a free rear guard that you can then use to kill for Blast of Dark skill and get Twin Drive. All around, Marron is all grade 1. I like him a lot. I think he's a good grade 1 ride deck target, and he all around just makes Keter Sentry have one of the best generic ride lines ever, so one of them in the red deck for Marron. Then we have our grade 2s. First, we run 4 copies of Drilling Angel, the card that is here in case things go to shit, and the only time I've been able to pull him off once is one of those times where things went to shit. Anyways, grade 2, NSF, 5k shield, 10k base. All nodes placed on rear guard. Put a unit card from your drop zone into soul. Look at the top 3. Choose up to 1 card from on them with the same name as the chosen card. Call it to rear guard and shuffle the deck. Okay, this ability I don't know how likely it is for other people to go up, but from when I've seen it play via me playing it, my friends playing it, and seeing other people play it, I've seen this thing out of like 50-ish times now go off successfully 3 times. Just saying, with cards that I know are 4-ofs in those decks, by the way, just saying that now. Literally, if you can't tell, this deck kind of dies without this, the grade 2, and to some extent the grade 3. So, you know, if one copy ends up in drop because maybe you're playing against a deck that nukes rear guards, you're supposed to call this down, put whatever copy of one of the 3 that ended up in the drop zone into your soul, whatever one you need more of, and then pray to God it's in the top 3. That only worked out once for me. I got really lucky. I didn't win that game because I got trigger sacked to death, but it just like, he's there in case it happens. And even then, it's like a risky bet trying to bank it on him. But you know what? When the chips are down, I know there will be one day where he actually is the reason I win a game. And he did end up helping me in that one situation. So I give him that 4 of Drilling Angel. It helps, just not much. Then we have 4 copies of Divine Sister Cassatella. Oh, yeah, so the other reason why we run a bunch of soul charging cards, because she's Soul Blast 2 for her skill. Grade 2 and stuff, 5k shield, 9k base. When she's placed on rear guard from your hand, Soul Blast 2, look at top 7, choose to 1 Divine Sister Spumone from among them, reveal it, or call it to the same rear guard circle, or, call it to a rear guard circle in the same column master and shuffle the deck. So technically speaking, yes, you can call Spumone on top of her for whatever reason you wanted to, but you can call them the same column, which is great because that sets you up for a 20k column swing or 18k column swing with a draw and a send something to bottom. All around, not a bad skill. There are plenty of soul charge in this deck, this boy and him, and then you can also, you know, fetch them both back via Duralvalse Angel skill. All around, Cassatella is a solid grade 2. She isn't bad. I wish her cost wasn't so unnecessarily hefty, because if you don't see either of these 2, then frankly you're running into a situation where you can't use her skill, because Soul Blast 2. But hey, she's not a bad grade 2. I do like her, so 4 of. And then we have our last grade 2, it's the grade 2 of the ride deck, 1 of in the ride deck and on the main deck of Blaster Dark. Grade 2 Intercept, 5k shield, 10k base. All was placed on rear or vanguard. I'm going to give you a hint now, there's no way to call it to rear guard in this deck, so you're only ever going to call it to vanguard by counterblasting 1 and retiring another rear guard. Choose one of your opponent's rear guards, murder it, and it gets +1 drive for the turn. All around, pretty good, you know, gets twin drive, very helpful into getting one of these 2 pieces into your hand, or just double trigger sacking your opponent. All around solid skill, especially because Wingal gives you a free rear, or Marron gives you a free rear guard, and then can use rear guard during your turn. If your rear guard was retired this turn, it gets +5k power. Again, never going to go off because there's no way in hell to get this thing onto rear guard circle in this deck, but if you managed to do it, congratulations, you did the impossible. You probably cheated and the judges are probably coming after you. Either way, Blaster Dark is a solid grade 2 for the ride deck, one of the best generic grade 2s for Keter Sentry, if not the actual best grade 2 for Keter Sentry in terms of generic ride line. So, one of Blaster Dark in the ride deck. Again, this deck is interchangeable. It was built as a joke, but take that as you will. It's not meant to be good. It's just meant to be funny. And move on to our grade 3s. First up, we run 3 copies of Diffuser Angel, grade 3 generic persona, 13k base. Again, trying to find ways to spam either of these 2 out on the board as physically possible. Weirdly enough, the deck that I specifically build to find 2 units, when in every other Keter deck, I draw 2 specific units that I do want in my hand so quickly, and the decks that I build specifically to get 2 units are the decks that don't do it the best, for whatever reason. Anyways, Easerod, all done when she's placed on rear guard by Soul Blasting 1, look at the top card of your deck. If it's a unit card, you may call it to rear guard in the same column as it. If it's not, you return it to the original spot. So, you don't have to call it to begin with. Meaning, if, say, for example, you did see a trigger, because it says any unit. If you did see a trigger from her skill, you don't have to call it. You can just put it right back to top, which is great, because that means you can guarantee a trigger. And your opponent doesn't know what it is. You just get to look at top. So, technically speaking, they could guess it's a trigger by your reaction, or they could just think that, oh, maybe it's a PG or Persona or something like that. All around, Easerod is a solid grade 3 to use, because she does get you a possible rear guard, allowing you to abuse your opponent with better attacks, and maybe spamming out your board a little bit faster. Sadly, she won't trigger Cassatella over here, because she has to be placed from hand for whatever reason, but all around, Easerod is a solid card for at least advance the board out a little bit, so 3 of. And then we have our last grade 3, or not our last unit in the deck, not our last card, and that would be 3 of in the main deck, 1 of in the ride deck of our main grade 3, quote unquote, Divine Sister Amaretti. Remember, this was a joke, not meant to be serious. Grade 3 200 persona, 13k base, continues rear guard during your turn. All your Divine Sisters Castellas and Divine Sister Spumone on the rear guard get +5k power. I'm gonna tell you that right now, because I tested it in one game where it was a Vanguard based skill. If that skill was Vanguard based, this deck would actually be terrifying to some extent, because now you don't have to have 2 of them, or like granted you could just run a normal ride line and just call 1 of them to the rear guard, but I, as a joke, put this on the ride deck just to make a point, and then so now I like basically 1 persona ride less because I have to call 1 to rear guard. But essentially, when you do have that ability where it's active on Vanguard Circle, it is terrifying to have those numbers stare you down, especially if it's a column of 2 of them, and it does stack if you have multiple. Just saying. So, again, wish she was a Vanguard skill, but she does have but her being a rearguard skill isn't bad, especially because she's free, so she does work out to be generic support for any line. I do suggest Graham Graves, because that's the easiest one to fit these guys into, in terms of cost-wise, but I wanted to make this the main grade 3, just to prove a point, and also to ask Bushy, please make a main grade 3 for Divine Sisters that allowed these 3 to become an actual good deck, because I actually think this was a fun mechanic that they could do something with. Either way, Amaretti's decent grade 3. She's not an amazing main grade 3, but she's an amazing support grade 3 in the sense that she goes 5k to 2 free units, making this a 14k followed by another 14k, so 28k columns just by 1 of them being on board. 4 of 3 in the main deck, 1 in the right deck. And then our actual last card for the deck is Gratios Gaudale. Literally the only deck I run the Persona Ride order in. Grade, 1 copy of it, grade 3, Regalia's piece. You may only have 1 Regalia's piece in your deck and use it in total of 1 time of fight. Play this if you have a grade 3 Vanguard Persona Ride and you do not Persona Ride this turn because maybe you called your Persona Ride to the rear guard. You activate Persona Ride. So, okay, you draw a card, all your front units get plus 10k power, and you're regarded to have Persona Ride this turn. So, if you have rear guards that, or like you have those new Dragon cards or any cards that activate when you Persona Ride, you can proceed to use those skills. Either way, though, that's like, it's free. It's a 10k to front row and a draw, but you'd be surprised how often I don't see this because, you know, it's a one of. And that's it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. I know there wasn't much explanation to this, but A, I'm tired. Like, I just did 15 deck profiles. Not in a row, but 10 of them in a row, and then got sick on the last 5, rushed out these last ones. Like, I'm literally recording this the day before it goes up, and I still have to upload this tonight and record another whole video right after this, and I got throat chopped before I started this video. So, like, you know, it's not that I'm not excited about this deck, it's just in the sense that I'm just excited to get this over with. So, without further ado, I'm going to end it here. I hope Bushy makes this into a new thing. I know they're not going to, but there's at least hope in trying. So, without further ado, I'm going to end it here. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to go watch the last set 9 deck profile. If you all know me, you know what it is, but if you don't know me, go ahead, take a guess. You'll see it tomorrow. So, see you all then. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, don't forget to follow Twitch, and I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to stand up your Vanguards.